by the Apostle Bartholomew, who received this rich spiritual tradition and faith to the Armenian people as well. And we know that it's been that faith that has more than anything kept our nations continuous and together throughout the last 2,000 years, even in the face of oppression, even in the face of violence, even in the face of being scattered around the globe. So we share that as well. But we also share some darker periods of our past too. Of course, we stood together as neighbors in our villages, and sadly we were slaughtered together as neighbors by the Ottoman Turks as well. Since the genocide, we have stood in loud voice demanding justice for the crimes that were committed against our martyrs. And for many generations now, those cries for justice have seemed to fall on deaf ears by people throughout the world, including the leaders of our own nation in Washington. And we've shared that urgency of demanding justice and demanding recognition. And we've stood together. We've stood together even in Washington, D.C., protesting together when Erdogan's thugs beat us down in our own nation's capital, beat Armenians, beat Greeks, beat Assyrians, beat Kurds, who had the courage to stand up and protest and demand our rights. We stood together then as well. And we've been united, sadly, in our grief as we see what happens today in the world. When we see Assyrian cultural treasures, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000-year-old treasures being dynamited, being destroyed again and again by these extremists who are corrupting everything about our historical lands. We share that too, as we see the desecration of Armenian churches in those same lands, Armenian cemeteries that are bulldozed, Armenian gravestones that are being used as paving stones. We share that with the Assyrian people as well. We mourn and we grieve and we demand justice for that as well. But let me tell you, my friends, we share something else as well, and I want to touch on Assemblymember Nazarian's point about politics not being a spectator sport. Because when 160,000 people took to the streets of Los Angeles and we demanded action from our own government, we demanded justice, we saw this flag flying next to the Armenian Yerequina. It's flying next to this flag as well, the flag of our nation as American citizens. We shared that moment together as well. And we know that it's important to remember the victims and to empower the future, but I would tell you this as well. By remembering the future, we empower the victims. By building the future of this community, we empower those who fell, and they will be victims no more. The martyrs of the genocide, the martyrs of the massacres will not be victims so long as we see the scouts that we saw this morning coming out here and reciting the pledges of allegiance to their two nations, in their two languages, in English to this flag and in their ancient Aramaic to this flag. As long as we see that, the martyrs will not be victims. They will be our foundation. They will be our inspiration. They will lift us up, and they will continue to make sure that the Assyrian people and the Armenian people and the Greek people and all those who stand with us in demanding justice will continue to flourish. So the future does not happen by itself. We build it. So let's get to work on building that kind of future, a future that recognizes our past, recognizes our need for justice, and makes sure that our young people will never forget their traditions, their faith, and their history. Thank you very much.
I didn't think the Armenians and the Assyrians were really rivals. I just remembered Semiramis and your king. That's what I knew. growing up. Thank you for that, Councilmember Cochrane. So regrettably, LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger could not be with us today, but I want to do a brief introduction before I ask her staffer Nicole Vartanian to come up on the stage. So Supervisor Barger proudly represents the residents of LA County's 5th Supervisorial District, the county's largest, spanning 2,800 square miles, including 22 cities, 70 unincorporated communities in San Gabriel, San Fernando, Crescenta, Santa Clarita, and the Antelope Valleys. If I could ask Nicole Vartanian to please come up on stage. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here as Field Deputy for Supervisor Catherine Barger. Supervisor Barger would like to thank the Assyrian American Association for inviting her here tonight and is very sorry she was not able to be here at the last minute. It's an honor to join you here for this solemn occasion as we commemorate Assyrian Memorial Day by remembering the deaths of hundreds of thousands during the Assyrian genocide by the Ottoman